What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Camper Report. Today, we've got a guest. Obviously, this is kind of a continuation of Around the NFL, the series I've been doing over the summer. And today, we've got a Buccaneers guest. Later on in the day, we'll have, hopefully, a Chiefs guest. But we've got a Buccaneers, obviously, Matt Matera. He works for Pewter Report. Obviously, as you see in his title. Tell us a little bit about what you do there and kind of how you started becoming a Buccaneers fan, how you started working at the at Pewter Report, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me on the show. And I am a reporter and director of media and digital for pewterreport.com. So just a little bit of background of Pewter Report. It's been around for over 25 years. It actually started out as a magazine before, the internet really got rolling around and social media. So it was a magazine called Buccaneer Magazine, and it's since changed to pewterreport.com. We are a, 24/7, 365 media company that specifically covers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're credentialed by the team and the NFL. So we're reporting all year long about the Buccaneers, the draft season as well, specifically as it pertains to the Bucs. We're at practice every single day. We're at every press conference in the locker room. We break news, write articles, everything else in between. We have a YouTube channel as well, Pewter Report TV. And so it's been around for a long time. I personally have been with Pewter Report for about 5 or 6 years now. I started out as an intern and, worked my way up to full time. So, that's, kind of what we do. Just cover the Bucs nonstop. I wouldn't say I'm a fan because I'm a reporter. So I got to be fair and unbiased. And I'm actually from New York originally. So growing up, I was a Jets fan, but then moved to Tampa to go to school and everything like that. And that's where we are now. Yeah.
So on the side, you're still cheering for the Bucs. Like you still love that Aaron Rodgers move that they made, or is it kind of just you're focusing on not the Bucs, the Jets?
I got you. Yeah. It's funny because when you try to get into sports, no one starts watching sports and just says, "Oh, I'm going to be completely unbiased and fair about everything." No, you go in because you love certain players or teams or anything like that. I'm lucky where, the Jets don't really face the Bucs that much. They do have a joint practice, funny enough, during training camp this season, which I will be at in later in August. But they never really interfere too much. I got a lot of friends that are still Jets fans, so I kind of enjoy when they get really excited about it. I want the Jets to do well, don't get me wrong, but I look at it through a little bit of a different lens just because you have to keep some professionalism with it. But don't get me wrong, I was ecstatic when we all found out that Aaron Rodgers was going to New York to play for the Jets, because it's been a long time since the Jets made the postseason. It's been over a decade.
Yeah, you're up there. The Jets are up there with the Lions and Browns, with one of the worst franchises of the 2000s. So hopefully they can make something happen. Guys, this is meant to be a joke, but if I start falling asleep during the show, it's because I had 2 hours of sleep last night. I've been traveling back from North Carolina visiting family. So bear with me here, but I'm just kidding. But let's get to let's waste no more time. Let's give the people what they want. Let's get to the first topic. Obviously, this is a little bit older of one, but since we don't on the show usually cover the Buccaneers, Lavonte David, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, a week ago, that he came out and said that this present Bucs team is more has more chemistry, is more together post the Tom Brady era. What do you think of that? What do you think of this? And did Tom Brady kind of leave a bad taste in certain Bucs players' mouths? Obviously, he's been known to be a guy who he's very competitive. Maybe that got to a lot of Bucs players. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so Lavonte David is the longest tenured Buck. He's going to be a Ring of Honor member for the team whenever he decides to retire. So whenever he says something, it definitely holds a lot of value when he's speaking. I don't think he's directly taking a shot at Tom Brady by any means. I just think the way that last season unfolded, where the Bucs had really, really high expectations because Tom Brady unretired and not everyone, but a lot of players were coming back. And you pretty much had the same team since when they won the Super Bowl in
Yeah.
2020. So expectations were very high, and they obviously struggled a lot. Now, much of that was because of the offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, and that's why they weren't that's why he's not there anymore. But I think a lot of it is not necessarily what happened with Tom Brady. I think it's because a lot of people are doubting Tampa Bay now because Brady's not there, and you have Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask in this quarterback competition. And there's a lot of doubters of Baker Mayfield, and understandably so, the way that his last two
Right.
went. But if you talk to a lot of Bucs players, like Rachaad White, their running back, he predicted they're going to go 12-5. So did Tristan Wirfs, their starting left tackle. Carlton Davis has been very, very adamant that teams are going to take them lightly and they're going to punch the other team in the mouth because this team is still really, really good, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't think what people understand, if you're not watching the Bucs all the time, last season, Tom Brady got a lot of credit for like big comebacks in the fourth quarter, had like game-winning touchdowns against the Saints and the Rams, specifically at home in Tampa Bay. But what people have to remember is the Bucs defense kept Tampa Bay in those games, and then Tom Brady made the big play at the end. But when the offense was only averaging 17 points per game, the defense had to make sure that their opponent was scoring less than 20 as well. So this defense still has a great core nucleus, and I think they're just kind of wiping the slate clean with it's a little bit of a us against the world mentality because a lot of people don't really think the Bucs are going to do much this season.
Well, and what is Lavonte David supposed to say? We're not more together as a team? Like, in his mind, he's thinking that was last year with Tom Brady. We need to give our new team confidence. We need to say all the right things because ultimately, at the end of the day, Tom Brady isn't on this team and anymore. And so you need to give the new guy confidence, which is Baker Mayfield. And obviously Kyle Trask is the backup. I'm pretty sure that's
it's a quarterback competition, but it definitely feels like it's Baker's job to lose.
Yeah. So, but you want to give that new guy confidence because otherwise you're basically there's no reward by saying, yeah, we were better off with Tom Brady. Why would you do that? So, and maybe, as Lavonte David's perspective, now that, obviously Tom Brady's arm was a little bit deteriorating at the end, you get a guy who can challenge the defense a little bit more and is making that defense that much stronger because he can throw downfield in practice. He's challenging the defense more in practice. And we know that in practice makes the best game, I guess, like creates the best game experience, if you know what I'm saying. So that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Brady really lost his arm strength too much. I still think that he was fairly, he could push it down the field. Now, his deep ball accuracy, I think, kind of faltered a little bit. For whatever reason, him and Mike Evans weren't necessarily on the same page as they were in 2020 and 2021 because Mike Evans still got over 1,000 yards. He still holds the NFL record for most consecutive seasons to begin a career, with 1,000 yards. So there was a little bit off there in terms of the deep ball with Brady, but I don't think it was more arm strength. Now with Baker Mayfield, it's very interesting. I do think he definitely has the arm strength, but the offense for the Bucs is changing a lot because they have a new offensive coordinator. His name is Dave Canales. He was the quarterbacks coach for the Seattle Seahawks. He now comes over to the Buccaneers, and this is his first opportunity to call plays in the league. But his offense is going to be very, very different. We could talk about it. I know we're talking about Lavonte David here, so I'll save the Canals discussion for a little bit later. But the Bucs offense last year was very vertical, down the field, big plays. This offense is going to be a little more horizontal. They're moving to a zone blocking scheme in the run game. They're also there's going to be a lot more shorter passes with emphasis on yards after the catch. You're going to see a lot of mesh routes and slants and a lot of pre-snap motion and play action, which they didn't do much last season, but you're going to see a lot more this year in this new offense.
Yeah, and again, that means we're going to get into breakout players for the season, but a lot more work for the running backs and possibly Chris Godwin because Mike Evans is a little bit more of that deep threat. But definitely interesting for sure. Carcast says, what's up? Shout out to Carcast. Go subscribe to his channel. But let's move on. Calijah Kancey, we're talking about the defense year one. Again, the big part, like the big downside of Calijah Kancey, that was kind of on a lot of people's mind. I guess the scouting report, his weakness was his size out of Calijah Kancey, defensive tackle out of Pitt. My thing is with him, so like, what are your expectations of Calijah Kancey in year one? And do they put him outside because of his size? I mean, if you look at what Kancey, he has great hands, and he could potentially, even though he played primarily defensive tackle, he could develop into a really good defensive end because of his speed and hands, is just how he plays. But I don't know if they move him outside, because you saw in a lot of running downs where he has a really good pad level, and he's going to be a good, like, not wide 9, but he's going to be a good, like, 3 defensive end, defensive front. So that's kind of like, I don't think they move him to the outside, but what are your thoughts?
Right. So Todd Bowles' defense is a 3-4 defense. So the outside linebacker position, which is what like Shaq Barrett plays and Joe Tryanchenko, that's the quote unquote defensive end position in a 3-4, where the defensive end in a 3-4 is more of like the defensive tackle. I think Calijah Kancey is more of a 3-tech type of technique. He'll line, like Vita Vea is like the clear cut nose tackle. So he'll line up on one side of the center. And I think Calijah Kancey will be on the other side. They're really going to use his speed. As you pointed out, the knock against him is that he's a little smaller in size, but he actually got comparisons to Aaron Donald in terms of size, which is a fantastic comparison. And of course, he also played at the University of Pittsburgh. John Randall as well, who is a Hall of Famer. They're really going to implement that speed. That was one of the main focuses of the Bucs front office, is get younger and get faster. So I'm excited to see what he can do in terms of, if teams are going to double team Vita Vea, can Calijah Kancey get that quick first step? I do worry a little bit on how he'll deal in the run game with double teams against him, if he'll be able to hold up against it. But I think he's got a really good work ethic. As far as moving him to outside linebacker, I don't think that's the case. You don't draft a guy in the first round and immediately make him change positions. They also drafted an outside linebacker, Yaya Diaby, out of Louisville in the third round. And then they also drafted Jose Ramirez from Eastern Michigan University in the 6th round. So they're kind of full at outside linebacker. Maybe they kick him out to like the defensive end role, again, in a 3-4, where you're more just like a regular defensive tackle. But I see him kind of closer to the center. But I'm excited for what he can do. He's definitely has that speed and has some moves to get after the quarterback. So we'll see.
The strength with him is, it's going to be, because going into the NFL, that's like the hardest position almost to play, I feel like, is the trenches. So my biggest thing is, I don't think he starts year one, just because maybe he takes a while to get up to that, like, strength level wise. But for him, it's not building on size, because his frame isn't necessarily meant to. I mean, he's 6'1".
Yeah.
He's not. If he builds on size, he loses that mobility. So you almost have to build on, like, lean muscle, get that creatine in your arms. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But you can't really build on size for that. But I was looking at his numbers just a second ago. He played like 95% of his snaps on the B gap or whatever. So he did not play any defensive end at all. So yeah, maybe don't move him around year one, but also at the same time, I don't think that he starts, just because, especially, he could be a late season guy that really comes on, but I'm not sure about.
I think he has
being a rookie is hard. So
yeah, no, it absolutely is. And that's a good point you made, because even like Vita Vea, when he came in and for the Bucs, his rookie year wasn't fantastic. Same if you want to go further back to like Gerald McCoy, his first year. So defensive tackle, I think outside of quarterback and cornerback, I think defensive tackle is arguably the toughest position to come into from going from college to the NFL. We'll see if Calijah Kancey, I could see him starting opposite of Vita Vea, but they also have a guy, Logan Hall, who was their first pick last year, but the Bucs traded out of the first round and got the first overall pick in the second round. So he was their first pick, but he was a second rounder, is what I'm trying to say. Logan Hall struggled his first year, but he put on a lot more weight this season. So we'll see how he looks at training camp. He could eventually start next to Vita Vea, but they might give Calijah Kancey that first shot if he really surprises a lot of people. Yeah, because he is a first rounder. You do want to make sure that you're not just wasting away when he's a first round pick. with that said, the Bucs do rotate their defensive line a pretty good amount. Like Vita Vea, even though he's their best guy, I think clocked in around, I want to say 65 to 70% of the snaps last year. So all the defensive tackles are going to get a pretty good amount of playing time anyway.
Well, and this you obviously compare him to Aaron Donald, but the size, I mean, there are guys like Javon Hargrave and we obviously DJ Jones is the frame on him. He nose tackle for the Denver Broncos. He's pretty good. Frame on him isn't the biggest frame. So it's like, you don't have to be necessarily size wise. It's just for guy like DJ Jones. He used to play for the 49ers, but he's a solid nose tackle for the Denver Broncos. And it took him a little while to become a really good nose tackle who can stop the run. So like, for guys like that, develop them a few years. And obviously your guys' defensive line, you're naming out guys, is pretty deep. So it's like you're drafting this guy to be a long-term project, which is what to some scouts was like, that's the perfect situation for him to go into. And you guys got to steal because I saw him going sometimes 13 overall, you know?
Yeah.
So you guys got to steal and you're going to be able to develop him and it's going to be a great situation. If your defense can stay healthy, it's going to be exciting to watch for sure. So
yeah, that's been the key for the Bucs. Is on paper they're great, but they had some tough injuries last year along at defensive tackle and in the secondary as well. Like Carlton Davis missed some games, Jamel Dean missed some games, and
you guys were down to Richard Sherman at the end of
that. Yeah, that was two
was
seasons
that the year
ago.
before? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was 2 seasons ago. That was, and then he got hurt as well. But he actually ended up being a pretty good mentor to those guys as well. But yeah, that they were dropping like flies that season. It was unreal.
Hey, the 49ers are top 10 in injuries every year, so I feel you there. So let's move on. 3 breakout players for this season. Running back, obviously, I have one. You were talking about the new, was it offensive coordinator?
Yeah.
The new running back from you guys. His name is
Rachaad White.
I forgot it. Yeah, Rachaad White. There we go.
He was actually going to be my first pick. No joke.
Oh, okay. So go ahead. Name your 3. I don't know. You know more about me, so I'm not going to name my 3. But
yeah, sure. So my first one, without question, Rachaad White. They drafted him last year from Arizona State. Yeah. And this guy is super talented. He's got a lot of patience, which I think is important for a running back, especially in this new zone blocking system. He's very elusive. He's not like the fastest running back, but he's elusive. He can break tackles. He obviously had that infamous stiff arm against the Seahawks in the Germany game last year when he won the angry runs on Good Morning Football. He's very capable in the passing game as well. The biggest problem last year is that Leonard Fournette was in the rotation, and he was the first running back. So he kind of had to wait his time. There are so many people banging the table for Rachaad White to get his opportunity. He's going to get it this year. Offensive coordinator Dave Canales absolutely loves Rachaad White. He said that Rachaad White is a violent runner, and he said that's the type of runner that I look for. And he went out of his way to call him a violent runner. Dave Canales comes from that Seattle offense where they implemented a lot of different running backs throughout the years because of injuries, and they were all successful. They were averaging over 5 yards per rushing attempt in the run game. There's going to be an emphasis of running the football this year for the Bucs. They were dead last in rushing last season, but they're getting their center Ryan Jensen back. He had a season-ending injury in training camp last year. He did return for the playoffs, but missed the whole season. They drafted an offensive guard, Cody Mauch, who's going to be starting at right guard. They revamped the offensive line a little bit. So I think Rachaad White has a great opportunity as a full-time starter to be a breakout candidate, and definitely pick him up in fantasy football.
Yeah. I was gonna say Mike Evans, because this guy definitely the last few years hasn't been as good as we saw him. My question to you was like, do you think he kind of revamps it a little bit this season? I think that you were mentioning the deep. Well, I was mentioning the deep element that I think Baker Mayfield will bring, and I think Mike Evans will, if he can stay healthy. That's the problem. Like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, great, but I think the third receiver for you guys is really going to be the most key after that, because it's like with the Seahawks. It's like JSN is the third receiver right now on the depth chart, but it's like whoever your guys' third receiver is, injuries are going to probably happen to one of those two guys. Right. I'm not wishing it upon a guy, but the third receiver is going to get a lot of work as the season goes on. So,
All right. Well, let me ask you, what's your definition of like a breakout player? Because in my opinion, Mike Evans is extremely established. He's made multiple Pro Bowls. He's smashed every offensive
That's
record in
true.
Buccaneers history. So to say he's a breakout player, like he's going into his 10th year, he's about to be 30. Like it's tough to say he's a breakout player. Or are you saying like he slumped last year and he's gonna like overcome it this season?
That's kind of what I was saying. But I guess you could go to guys like rookies that they drafted, like Calijah Kancey, and he's going to be interesting because a lot of one-on-ones
like
inside.
I'm thinking like younger, like second, third year players that
that makes sense.
Are kind of like more up and coming because like Mike Evans is known as like one of the best offensive players in the league.
That's
true. He's a future Hall of Famer. But yeah, to your point about Mike, he still got 1,100 yards last year, even with the struggle, and he had a down year in touchdowns and still had 6. The last 2 years, he had 14 and 13 touchdowns respectively, maybe 13 and 12, but like he's just a monster in the red zone, and the Bucs have to get back to that. And Dave Canales, I know I keep bringing his name up. We had him on our podcast recently, so had some great downtime with him. And they are going to feed Mike Evans. They're going to feed Chris Godwin. So both of them did not score a lot of touchdowns last year, but you're going to see that number go way up this year.
Well, and Russell Gage was another guy that like he was really good for the Falcons, and then kind of just you didn't see him a ton with the Buccaneers. That could be a guy.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about like, I could see the Buccaneers bringing in that like we didn't cover this in the last segment, but I could see them bringing in Kancey for like third downs. And as far as sacks goes, you could go you could see a lot of production on that end with him. So that could be something as well.
Yeah, especially with that speed. If it's a third and long, bring Kancey in there. Russell Gage, he was so great during training camp last year. And then towards the end, right before the last preseason game, he suffered a hamstring injury. And he's able to play through it, like some of it. But he just clearly wasn't the same because he's a big yards after the catch guy. And he scored a fair amount of touchdowns, but a lot of them were kind of like garbage time touchdown type. And then he got hurt this year, too. Like during OTAs and minicamp, he hasn't practiced yet either. So if he can get fully healthy, I think he could be great in this offense. I don't know if he's really going to be able to stay healthy. Because if it's a hamstring injury again, that's a soft tissue injury. It feels good one day. Then it's rough the next day. It's kind of tough to, to really figure that one out day by day. But, the Bucs also... they restructured his contract. He took less money to come back this year because they were going to cut him. So he needs to have a big season if he wants to stay for next year as well on his contract.
I got a late round guy, Tay Barber, receiver. He's a guy who, I watched a lot of Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. It's because of Jim Harbaugh went there. And back in the day when he got fired, I didn't understand it, why he got fired from the Niners. And so I followed him to Michigan. I've liked him for now like 9 years. But ever since he's been there, I've liked him. But that's a guy last year. Michigan had a great secondary, and him and Quentin Johnston really had a field day, especially Tay Barber. I didn't see Quentin Johnston as much, but Tay Barber was really good in that game and was really good down the stretch. So that's like, I don't get a lot of these guys who are great in the playoffs can be great in the playoffs, and then they just go undrafted. So it's like, that's a guy where his speed, for sure, downfield.
Tay Barber, I was really impressed from what I saw from him during OTAs and minicamp. And I think he's a talented player. He's able to go after the ball, solid in the red zone as well. The only problem for him really is that the Bucs have a lot of talented undrafted free agents at wide receiver that he's going to be competing against. And they also have like 2 wide receivers that were on the practice squad last year that were also undrafted free agents. So they're going to their second season. So you got like the undrafted free agents along with Tay Barber, who I like. You also got Raheem Jarrett from Maryland, I believe. Cade Warner, who's the son of Kurt Warner. He played at Kansas State. He's in there. They drafted Trey Palmer out of Nebraska. So Trey Palmer is probably going to be the 4th wide receiver. They also got David Moore. He's a veteran wide receiver that, came from like Seattle, where that offensive system is kind of moving to. So there's a lot of, and Devin Tompkins was their punt returner last year. He's one of the undrafted free agents. So is Kalen Geiger. So you got a lot of guys all lobbying for maybe 2 spots. So I'd like to see Tay Barber make the team. It wouldn't shock me if he made the practice squad and then got called up for, certain game day situations and things like that. The next breakout guy I'm going to pick, this one's a little bit interesting because he's been in the league for a couple of seasons, but this is his first year with the Buccaneers, and that's Ryan Neal. He's a safety. He just signed as a free agent this year. He came from Seattle, and last year he was the highest rated safety on Pro Football Focus. Now, he wasn't a starter, but he was able to start towards the end of the season because they had a lot of injuries for Seattle. So the Bucs are trying to find lightning in a bottle again with him in the same way that they found it with Shaq Barrett back when they signed him in 2019, because Shaq Barrett was stashed deep on the depth chart of the Denver Broncos because they had Von Miller and a lot of great pass rushers there. So they got Shaq Barrett for relatively cheap, signed him to the Bucs, and then he had 19 and a half sacks in his first year when he got to be like a full-time starter when he came to Tampa Bay, and then got that big contract next year and obviously helped the Bucs win a Super Bowl in 2020. So they're trying to do that again with Ryan Neal. He's got great size. He's super fast, very physical as well. He's going to be working right next to Antoine Winfield Jr., who, in my opinion, is one of the best free safeties in the NFL. I'd say at least top 5, even though the Madden ratings might say a little bit different. So I think Ryan Neal, his first opportunity to be a full-time starter for all 17 games, working in Todd Bowles type of defense. And Todd Bowles loves safeties, and especially versatile safeties. So they're going to move Ryan Neal around everywhere. And I think it's really exciting what he can do coming to Tampa.
I don't really put much stock into Madden at all because Derwin James, they have him as the highest rated safety, and I think he's okay. Am I wrong here that I just think he's like a little bit overrated? Like, this guy has been injured for a lot of his career, and he had I think it was last year that he had a good season, but it's like he's not even he played Travis Kelce for the most part, wasn't great against him. And so it's like coverage wise, he's not shutting. I would say Jimmy Ward, a safety that we used to have, was actually almost better against Travis Kelce while facing him or at least looked better than Derwin James against Travis Kelce. So it's like, okay, you can't shut down a really good tight end. Why? I don't know. I know Travis Kelce's really versatile, but Derwin James, don't get me started.
It is so funny. That you mentioned Derwin James, because that is a contentious name with Buccaneers fans, because back when Derwin James obviously played at Florida State, so there's a fair amount of Bucs fans that are also Florida State fans. That year he was in the draft, there was a huge argument and discussion whether the Bucs should have drafted Vita Vea, which they did, or Derwin James. Then obviously Derwin James had a great rookie season, and everyone was going crazy about, you should have drafted Derwin James. It has since, evened out, and it's a pretty level playing field now because Vita Vea is, a top nose tackle in this league. I think Derwin James is a great player, but he's just injured a lot.
Yeah.
And if you get injured a lot, you can't be known as one of the top guys, but you only play, 8 games a season. It kind of reminds me of, and I don't know if you'll know this player because you're a lot younger than I am.
16. So yeah, a lot younger.
You're 16?
Yeah.
No way. Really?
Really? Yeah.
Wow.
How old do you think I am?
I was going to say 21, maybe 20.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
hey, good. Hey, good.
That's
for you,
flattering
man.
that you think I'm older, but yeah.
Hey, good for you for starting this YouTube channel pretty early. But Bob Sanders was a safety on the Colts. Extremely talented player, but he got hurt all of the time. So it's the best ability is availability, as they say.
So I don't know if we've already kind of covered, but do you have a third player? I mean, we've already kind of covered.
Yeah, I have 2 actually. So one of them is Cade Otton, a tight end out of Washington. He's going into his second year. There's a lot of times he would come on big in the second half, so I want to see him do it for a whole game, not just in the second game. And they also didn't give him enough playing time last year. They split time with him and Cam Brate, who's not with the team anymore, where it should have just been Cade Otton's job. So him as a full-time starter, I think they're going to use the tight ends a lot of 2 tight end systems in this offense. So I think he can do some great things. And the last guy I'm going to say, not necessarily a breakout player in terms of he's established in the league as one of the best cornerbacks, and that's Carlton Davis. I think he's up there as some of the best, but he hasn't made a Pro Bowl yet or an All-Pro because he drops a lot of interceptions. Every year in his career, he's had one interception, except for one season, he had 4 interceptions. If he can start taking the ball away this year, he will be a Pro Bowl cornerback, but he's got to get the turnovers. If he can do that, so he'll break out in that sense. He's already an established good player, but if he can get the turnovers, that'll be a game
now
changer.
Now that you're laying it out to me, Antoine Winfield, Carlton Davis, Keanu Neal, he's a good. I mean,
he's on the Steelers now. Yeah,
really. Oh. Okay, never mind.
He was on there last year, but he signed in free agency.
Yeah. Well, anyways, you guys have a great secondary. You guys have a great secondary. Yeah, Dean. But yeah, that's interesting. I think, we were talking about Calijah Kancey and you didn't name him, but this guy, if he can get past those strength issues, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups inside. So that should be interesting as well. And I mean, Mayfield, I think let's actually transition a little bit. Mayfield, my thing with him, you're talking about the 2 tight ends, you're talking about more of a run game. I think a lot of the systems that he played in before was quite the opposite. It was drop back and sling it, or just use your, I think as much like you need to take pressure off of that arm. And if they can do that, I just think that with Mayfield, the coaches around him haven't been the greatest. I mean, we thought that, Judge was okay, but he wasn't that good. And then the Browns coach, I can't remember who was it. Who was the Browns coach?
I'm trying to think who was before Kevin Stefanski.
Stefanski. Now. What was it? I want to say it was. Oh my gosh, I know his name. It's on the.
When they were on Hard Knocks too, right?
Yeah, it was the bald dude. I think.
Bald guy.
I can't remember. Was it Gus Johnson? No, is that his name?
Gus Johnson's the announcer.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Great announcer though.
Yeah. I can't remember. Hold on.
Yeah, neither can I.
Anyways, my point is, none of the organizations that he's played for has had established good coaches. I don't know. We'll get into more of Todd Bowles later, but you're talking about this new system and how there's going to be a lot. I mean, the defense, if it can stay healthy, there's going to be a lot more flexibility in the system, and it's going to kind of take pressure off of him. So I think that he's going to be a little bit better with the weapons around him than he has been in previous seasons. It's just he needs to be better because this is ultimately his last shot. I thought last year was his last shot, but this is ultimately his last shot at a starting job. So does he shine now that he has stable weapons with the Buccaneers?
I think he's going to be much better than people expect Baker Mayfield to be. And I get all the criticism against him, and he should shoulder some of the blame, especially his last couple of seasons or his last season with the Cleveland Browns. But I think we also have to factor in, Baker didn't have a choice when he got traded to Carolina. The Browns just decided they're going to move on from him. So he went to Carolina. The Browns were like, yeah, we'll trade you to there. And that system was never the right system for him. Mm-hmm. And he also played his last year with the Browns. He played with a torn rotator cuff.
Yeah.
Like, that's gutsy. He could have easily just been like, no, I'm going to sit out the rest of the season. But he played with a torn rotator cuff. And then, gets traded to Carolina. That didn't work out. He goes to the Rams. He has that infamous game, 2 days with the team. And then he goes
the Raiders
and beats the Raiders. But that offense that he played with the Rams is very similar to what Tampa Bay is going to be implementing this year with their new offensive coordinator, because Dave Canales, one of the offensive coordinators that he worked for in Seattle, previously worked for the Rams. So the Niners offense, the Rams offense, kind of like what you see in Miami as well. The Bucs is not going to look exactly like that, but there's going to be certain elements to it. And Baker now, he's playing in a very quarterback-friendly offense. There's going to be a lot of motion, a lot of play action, QB waggles, and quarterback rollouts. Baker is good at throwing on the run. So they're really going to play to his strong suit. The last thing I'll say about Dave Canales, he worked with Geno Smith last year. Geno Smith's career was over. It was done, and then it got revived. He made the Pro Bowl with the Seahawks, completely turned around his career. He's going to try to do that again with Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker had some talent when he was with the Browns, like actually not Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's there now, but like he had Odell, but clearly not the same talent. Yeah, go ahead. Your show.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna tell you the coaches. It was Hugh Jackson, not Gus Johnson. It was Freddie.
Yeah.
It was Freddie Kitchens, and then before that, Hugh Jackson.
Yeah,
those are two. Like
That's
Freddie
right.
Kitchens, awful. So go ahead.
It's coming back to me now because Hard Knocks.
The 2019 year was Freddie Kitchens,
right?
When they
Hugh
failed
Jackson
miserably.
was the Hard Knocks year, and the coach was like, "Yeah, I think we should do this," and everyone agreed. And then Hugh Jackson was like, "No, we're gonna do that instead," and I'm the head coach, so it's my call. But yeah, I mean, when you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and a very talented running back and Rachaad White, I mean, they're going to help out Baker Mayfield. And the fact that these guys are going to get open much, much easier because of the eye candy, because of the confusion, because of all the motion and things like that. This very much is Baker Mayfield's last opportunity to be a starter, because if not, I think he's going to be a perennial backup across the league. He could stay in the league for another 10 years if he wanted to, but it would be as a backup quarterback. Put it this way. The over-under on the amount of wins that the Bucs are going to have this year is 6.5. I would very much take the over on that. I would very much take the over. I don't think Baker's going to win MVP or anything like that, but he's able to run a sustainable offense. He's just got to worry about the turnovers. That's always been the big knock on Baker Mayfield, is the turnovers. But if you're in a quarterback-friendly offense, and that's the emphasis, and you go into a situation where, there is a quarterback competition. So you can't just sling it all over the place willy-nilly and have it get intercepted. Because if you do, they will turn to Kyle Trask. And Todd Bowles won't be afraid to do that. But I do think it's Baker's job to lose. And with that talent, I think he's going to be successful.
Do you put in any stock into kind of the schedule that you guys have this year? Because I know it's tough. I mean, you guys have the Vikings week 1. That's not terrible. The Bears, Eagles, Saints, Lions, but like you have the Bills on there. You have the Titans on there. Who knows? 49ers on there. You have let's see, obviously the Jaguars on there. That's tough.
Yeah. So the reason why I think they're going to go over 6.5
hold on to interrupt. Yeah. Not every, because I was talking to a Saints guy a few weeks ago, and not every analyst or guy, like a guy that covers their teams, not every guy like relies on the schedule to tell them how many wins. They don't base it off of the schedule, because not everybody, because it could change so much during the season. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely hear what you're saying. I would argue, there are tough teams on there. Monday night against the Eagles, Thursday night on the road against the Bills. No question, those are really tough teams. The Eagles are just in the Super Bowl when they lost to the Chiefs, and the Bills are a perennial Super Bowl contender. But the reason I would say the Bucs are going to go over 6.5 wins, I mean, first of all, their own division stinks. Like, who's the best team in the NFC South? I think that's up for debate. Some people might say the Saints. Maybe. Yeah, but I mean, Desmond Ridder is their starting quarterback. Yeah. I don't know. That's I'm not too high on that.
Their fans are optimistic. I've talked to Falcons content creators. They're optimistic. The weapons are there, but the quarterback.
Right. And the Saints, they probably have the best quarterback in the division. I know Carolina is drafted first overall, but I think with rookies, you got to wait a little bit before you anoint them the best quarterback in a division.
Well, and every rookie, even Trevor Lawrence, who's now just starting to come into his own.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a little bit of time. So just for this season specifically, like the Saints lost a lot of players on defense. So they're kind of revamped there. And then the Bucs also play the AFC South. So you're talking about the Colts rookie quarterback. The Titans, they don't even – I know they got DeAndre Hopkins, but they don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Yes, the Jaguars are good, but the Texans, that's not too difficult either.
Yeah.
And then the other division they play this year is the NFC North. The Vikings, some people say the Vikings are frauds, and the fact that they were like 8-0 in games decided by 7 points or less, that's not going to happen again this year. The Packers –
their defense is terrible.
Yeah, the Packers, you cannot tell me that they're better with Jordan Love than they would be with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
The Bears, everyone's all over the place with them. Not a ton of people believe in Justin Fields. And then, the Lions are the team that everyone loves now, and everyone thinks the Lions are going to be great. But what if they regress?
I've been saying I've been saying with the Browns, well, the Lions the hype at least reminds me so much of what the Browns were in
When they
2019 when
traded for
Freddie
Odell?
Kitchens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah,
100% agreed. Everyone thinks the Lions are like the next big thing. And, maybe they will be, but I'm
maybe.
just
Yeah.
saying, all those other teams that I named in the divisions, those are very winnable games for the Bucs. And they have to do their job too, obviously.
Mhm.
Baker has to play to a pretty high level, and that defense needs to remain intact. But I'm just saying, there is a window of opportunity for the Bucs to
Right.
make the postseason again, or at least battle to win the division. Like, I don't think they're going to be great. I don't think they're going to win 10 games, but I could see them going 9-8 and winning the NFC
Yeah.
South and
Yeah, that's
hosting a home playoff game.
very possible. Very possible. Also, the NFC is terrible. So,
Yeah, it really is. The
yeah.
AFC is a monster across
Mhm.
the board. The NFC, you got like two teams. You got the Eagles, Cowboys, and 49ers. You got three teams that are like pretty good.
But even the 49ers, it's like
Well,
injuries,
they just need
quarterback.
the quarterback situation is really just what it comes down to.
Yeah. And my fear with the 49ers real quick is
Yeah.
like my fear with them is if they start off slow again this season, their schedule is so hard. Can they even rebound like they did last season? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bucks play the 49ers this year.
They do. They do. No offense, but that game against you guys last year was
Demolishing.
absolutely glorious. I love that.
Demolishing. Like, not even remotely close. That
Yeah.
was an absolute whooping.
That's the game where kind of Brandon Ayuk to me kind of asserted himself as like if he's on another team with a consistent quarterback, that guy's going to be over in 1,000 yard because he was going crazy in that game with some of his plays he made. But yeah. So let's move on. Talking about Baker Mayfield's last chance. Is this Todd Bowles' last chance? I know this. I don't know if this is a major talk of because I'm not a ton in Buccaneers Twitter. I don't really.
Yeah.
I'm not really. I don't really know a ton if this is actually a topic of discussion. But I know that Todd Bowles, the 2 seasons that he's become a head coach, one of them he missed the playoffs, and yeah, he's 0-1.
Last year was his first year with the Bucks
Yeah,
as a head coach.
and then okay, so my bad. So 1 season and he's
Yeah.
0-1. Do you think this is kind of do you think they give him more time? Or because again, you could argue that if they do bad enough this year, they could start off with a whole new regime. They could
Yeah.
bring in somebody like Lincoln Riley, and they could bring in somebody like not Caleb Williams, but like even Michael Penix, whatever, the guy from Washington.
Yeah.
And they could get in new quarterback, new coach, start over again. You could argue that Todd Bowles, since he does have a defensive background, isn't the greatest at developing quarterbacks. So maybe if you were to start over again with a new quarterback, he wouldn't be the one to start over with. So is this year his last chance to kind of not get fired? How far would he have to go to keep his job?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky situation, really,
Yeah.
because last year was definitely a disappointment. He comes in as the head coach, but I think what people don't realize is he wasn't named head coach until much later on in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
It happened during the NFL owners meetings, which take place, um, once the season's done, like after coaching hirings are done. That's when Bruce Arians stepped down in order to allow Todd Bowles to become the head coach. He obviously was the coach for the Jets years ago, so this is the second head coaching stint. So he didn't necessarily get to bring in some of his own personal coaches, like whether he wanted a different offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach or whatever, because all those coaches already had jobs. So with that said, you still had Tom Brady. You still had a team that was ready to win now. And yes, they did make the playoffs. They won the division, but they won it at 8-9. Like, they won it with a losing record. Now, the
And
Bucs
very controversially as well.
Yeah.
Like there were some games.
The Bucs ownership in the past has shown that they'll give a coach a little bit of time. They'll give every coach at least 2 seasons, but they will pull the plug pretty quick. Now, I think you have to look at it with a different lens of Tom Brady's not there anymore. So you're bringing in a new quarterback and a new offense. So there is going to be sometimes with growing pains. So put it this way. And everyone thought the Bucs were going to tank. But I was like, well, if they were going to tank, why did they re-sign Lavonte David? Why did they re-sign Jamel Dean?
They didn't try to get any type of quarterback in the
they
draft
didn't.
either.
Yeah, they didn't
Hooker
go
was
at
there. So,
exactly. Who was there?
yeah. Hooker. Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, and exactly. They didn't go after a quarterback. So why, like, they're not trying to tank just yet because they brought back all of these players.
Yeah.
So I think what it really comes down to, and also if you're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator, what do you do next season if you fire the coach? Like you're going to restart an entirely new offense once again with all the guys you have here. So you're going to ask the whole team to learn a new offense for the third straight season after last year already knowing the offense and this year and the next season. So I think what it comes down to is how does the team look in November and December? Because if they struggle out the gate, they may end up with an 8-9 record, 9-8, whatever it is. But if you start out, 2-6, whatever, but then you win your last 7 or 8 games down the stretch, you're trending in the right direction and you may have something here. Now, if they just completely fall off the rails and go, 3-14, then I think Todd Bowles is out of a job. But you can't look at everything exactly the same. You can't look at last year's Bucs with Tom Brady and this year's Bucs with Baker Mayfield and say it's the exact same thing. You got the exact same results. Like if they go 8-9 this year with Baker Mayfield, I would kind of say that is a success that you can build on for next season. So is he on the hot seat? I think it's simmering a little bit for sure, but November and December will give us a much more accurate response and answer to it.
Well, and like you said, how long will you keep the veterans kind of entertained? Because it's still quite a few veterans on that team. And to me, if they go after new coach, new quarterback, you're basically cutting a lot of different players, which is not ideal at all. But the thing is like, what do you really, really want to do that? So yeah, like you said, it would have to be a complete collapse because otherwise, I mean, no, I guess a few veterans, but no, this team has been around for a while and no team is going to want to play with a rookie quarterback. It's just like with the 49ers and Trey Lance, when he came in, it was a bad time. We had a bunch of veterans. And so we still have a bunch of veterans, but yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and contracts obviously come into play, like they.
Yeah, because is there any like expiring big name contracts?
So
on your guys' team?
They're trying to re-sign or do a contract extension with Mike Evans, and Mike's like the most team-friendly guy of all time. He's great in the community. He's gigantic with his charity and everything like that. So they're trying to sign him to an extension, which I'm sure it'll happen before the start of the regular season. Chris Godwin, they just signed last offseason. Their cornerbacks, Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. Dean got paid this offseason. Carlton got paid last offseason. So you still have those guys on the books for a fair amount of time. And then you have Antoine Winfield Jr. and Tristan Wirfs, who are coming off their rookie contracts. So the Bucs are going to want to lock them up and sign them to long-term contracts because Tristan Wirfs is arguably the best offensive tackle in the league. So you still have a lot of these pieces that you're going to have anyway. And you can't get rid of everybody, so you might as well go for it while you still have these players in their prime.
It's a mystery to me why we passed up on Tristan Wirfs, the 49ers.
He was the fourth offensive tackle taken in that draft. That's what's most shocking more than anything else. And the Bucs traded up one spot with the 49ers.
And
we
guys got
Javon Kinlaw, right?
Yeah, that was the worst pick ever. We could have picked CeeDee Lamb, which later in that draft we picked Brandon Ayuk, who is good. And I don't think CeeDee Lamb would be best utilized in this offense. I'm like, okay, whatever with him. But I mean, yeah, Wirfs would have been so much nicer. You put him on the right side, Trent Williams on the left side. Yeah. Although
that's nasty.
You guys just gave him a contract. I don't think we would have been able to repay him. So, I mean, we have.
Wirfs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're looking. They did some like void years with him, but they got it. He's going to get his money next season.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. This has been. We're out of topics. This has been almost an hour long. So thanks for giving us your time. This was a lot of fun, kind of getting more knowledgeable. The Bucs are one team where like I see them, but I don't really like actively like invest my time in them. Sure. So it was definitely interesting to see what you had to say. Tell them one more time, the people, where they can find, obviously, Pewter Report and kind of what you do.
Yeah, pewterreport.com. That's the website for all
Link
of
in
your
description.
for all of your Buccaneers coverage. We have the Pewter Report podcast, which goes on 4 times a week on our YouTube channel, Mondays and Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can follow me on my social media on Twitter at Matty4_Matera, Matera. And yeah, I'm a reporter for Pewter Report and director of media and digital. So yeah, pewterreport.com. Check out all of our stuff, our YouTube channel, our social media. It's all at Pewter Report. And thank you so much for having me on.
It was a lot of fun. Whenever I can get, guests that will plug me into other teams, it's tons of fun. But guys, go and check out, obviously, this show afterwards. We're ending this live, but watch it afterwards. I'll be putting show chapters in the description shortly afterwards. And then in 1 hour, I'd have to check my Twitter DMs, but I'm pretty sure I'm going live with his name is Chiefs Priority. So Chiefs content creator. Next, we'll be talking about DeAndre Hopkins news, kind of what happened there with how they fumbled the bag on DeAndre Hopkins. So we'll see you guys in 1 hour at, let's see, I guess it would be 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. Where I live, it would be 5 p.m. Mountain. We'll see you guys there.